everyone. Hello. First off, how weird are these? Welcome to the Leaders of the 21st Century. I'm Katie Maraghi.
I'm Brian Mazurski, and we are both Communications Fellows in the class of 2015, trying to be leaders in technology in this century. It is so great to join each of you this evening on a weekend full of celebration, and that's exactly what we're doing here tonight, is to celebrate some of Elon's best and brightest students whose personalities, personal characteristics, academic success, commitments to service and leadership, and excellence have distinguished them as fellows and scholars on this campus. It is my pleasure to say that we all have truly made a fantastic chance to take every Elon experience we have on this campus. Let's take a look.
Next to raising my own children, I can't think of a greater privilege than to be a president of a university like this. Of course, this is a place where you're going to come and earn a degree, but it's also a place that's going to get you to think very deeply about how you're going to use that degree to make the world a better place.
When you can tell something's really taken hold, it's not just the eyes lighting up, but it also comes through in what they say and how they say it. And that's what makes us want to be teachers.
I am really invested in doing work with people at home and also abroad.
Service learning, internship opportunities, other cultures and being aware, words that you hear and read and write essays about, but I think the learning can actually happen only when you go there. That's where the growth occurs the most.
You don't realize how important it is to you until afterward. It's kind of like conquering things, and then by doing that, you kind of conquer something in yourself.
A lot of people at Elon are very driven, and they want to get involved, and they want to make opportunities for themselves.
I think you have to believe that what you're doing means something. That's what makes it worth it. It takes patience. Simple hard work.
I wanted to be at a campus that was ready to take me and ready to improve me and better me. The best is yet to come.
Elon has really opened my eyes to things that I haven't been able to notice before. And it's an experience that I don't know if I would be able to replicate anywhere else.
I can't not love it here. It is home. What's on my mind is how to stay but keep going. It's going to be that constant struggle and balance always. It's in that you see where you've gone, and that's what's going to help take me where I want to go. Yeah, it's scary, but it's really exciting, and I can't wait. I just can't wait.
And with that, please join us in welcoming to the stage President Leo Lambert.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here to celebrate with this very special group of students and their families. I think members of the class of 2015, you will agree that you have changed in ways that you could not have anticipated 4 years ago. And I would argue that two key ingredients played crucial roles in this process. One, the deep mentoring relationships you've enjoyed here at Elon, and the set of high-impact learning experiences that you have engaged in. I want to take just a minute to thank the faculty and staff mentors who are central to these programs, and to consider how relationships are central to an Elon education. The word I hear most often to describe this university is community. But what is a community but a set of human relationships? A community is people. And when you peel back and think about what is lasting and what you will remember always about your experience here at Elon University during your last 4 years, it's a deep and meaningful set of relationships with peers that you're sitting next to right now, and with faculty and staff who have been a tremendous influence on your lives, and I guarantee you are going to be an important part of your lives always. Students are tired of hearing me talk about this, but parents haven't heard it yet. I think it's very interesting data, and I want to share it. This spring, the Gallup poll, working with Purdue University, came out with a survey of 30,000 college graduates. And this survey demonstrated that if graduates had one, a professor who cared about them as a person, two, a professor who made them excited about learning, and three, encouraged them to pursue their dreams, their odds of being engaged at work following graduation, being engaged in their professional lives, more than doubled. Think about the importance of that. Mentors not only influence the kind of experience that you have here during your 4 years at the university, there's a big translational effect in terms of how those relationships are going to affect the kind of person you're going to be at work. The sad part is that only 14% of 30,000 college graduates said they had all three. The survey also found that if graduates had an internship or a job where they were able to apply what they were learning in the classroom, were actively involved in extracurricular activities and organizations, and worked on projects that took a semester or more to complete. Does that sound familiar, fellows? Their odds of being engaged at work doubled also, as did their overall sense of well-being, how they felt about themselves as people. So the kinds of the deep and rich experiences that you've enjoyed here in these fellows programs, the mentors who have been so important to you, the most important message I want to leave you with today is that doesn't stay here at Elon when you graduate tomorrow. That is going to follow you to graduate school, it's going to follow you to work, and I think it's going to put you in very, very good stead for success. And that's why, when I think of what is at the very core of Elon University and why this is such an incredibly special place, it is the quality of human relationships that we have on this campus. And when you think about the high-impact practices that were just sketched out in that video that Elon is so well known for, internships, think about how important your internship mentor was. The faculty and people you got to know abroad during your study abroad experiences, your senior capstone professor, your Elon 101 or global instructor first year, the community partners you engaged with, perhaps here in Burlington, perhaps in Pune, India, and your research mentors, the people that took the time to review 80 drafts of your thesis with you. You have all been tapped on the shoulder, fellows, many, many times during your experiences here. You've been deeply enriched, and I will remind you now, it's your turn to go out into the world and start tapping other people on the shoulder. I also want to ask our fellows to remember one final thing, and that is, Elon is always going to need your great talents. What passes for leadership in our world today is far too often self-serving or partisan. Leadership in the 21st century is about stepping up when it is unpopular and tackling complex and important problems without easy answers. And that's what you've become expert at doing as fellows. And that speaks to me about my deep conviction about why the world so deeply needs Elon graduates. But your alma mater is going to need you as well. This is still a very young university. It's been around for 126 years, which is not a long time in the history of universities. The quality of your involvement over the next decades in the life of this institution, the depth of your caring and stewardship and concern for future students who are here is going to have a large bearing on the nature of the university that we're going to be 100 years from now. So I ask you to keep that perspective in mind as you are in your cap and gown tomorrow and sitting under the oaks, and take a few minutes to contemplate the big idea that graduation is not represent any kind of an end to your relationship with Elon University. It's about a new beginning. It's about a new way, it's about thinking about new ways that you're going to connect with this institution and shape it and make it stronger for people who will follow you. So we have a date, as I said to you 1,365 days ago, to meet under the oaks tomorrow morning. The time has passed in the blink of an eye. Congratulations again, seniors. The best is yet to come. Long live Elon.
Thank you, President Lambert. Now it is our time, and great pleasure to introduce you to our classmates, the Fellows and Scholars of the class of 2015. As your program in your seat indicates, this group is comprised of honors, Elon College, business, communications, teaching, and Isabella Cannon Leadership Fellows, as well as Lumen and Periclean Scholars. We invite you to read more about each of those in your program, but for now, let's just get a little taste of some of the impressive stats and figures about this class and really put these iPads to use.
That'll work. Our classmates entered Elon University 4 years ago with records already setting them apart as future leaders of the 21st century. They came in with academic profiles matching those of incoming classes at Vanderbilt, Boston College, and Georgetown. Over the past 4 years, these students have made the most of an Elon education. First and foremost, they've excelled in class. Tomorrow, 35% of these students will graduate with a cumulative GPA of a 3.7 or higher, earning magna or summa cum laude honors. Another 25% will graduate cum laude with a GPA above 3.5. An impressive number of our classmates sitting here on the sides have been inducted into the most prestigious academic honor societies in the country, including Phi Beta Kappa and Phi Kappa Phi.
Representing almost every undergraduate major and minor, they have engaged the 5 Elon experiences: study abroad, internships, undergraduate research, service, and leadership, at rates often exceeding the university average.
They've engaged in global study all around the world, from New York to LA, here in the US, from London to Florence, Costa Rica and Peru, from Senegal and Kenya to India and China.
Having exceeded the university's internship rate of 86%, more than 1/5 of this class has completed between 2 and 4 internships. They've interned with the likes of NBC, CBS, Time Warner, GlaxoSmithKline, the U.S. House of Representatives, the Cincinnati Reds, Warner Brothers, and GE.
Doubling the university average, more than 40% of our classmates have participated in an extended, mentored undergraduate research project with a faculty member. They've won every Elon University endowed scholarship that supports undergraduate research and have delivered more than 200 presentations of their work or performances of their creative work. Some already have professionally peer-reviewed research articles published or accepted for publication at a later date.
Those here have completed untold numbers of service hours, nationally, regionally, and internationally.
Our classmates have held an immense range of campus leadership roles. They have been leaders in, and hang with me, multi-faith, student government, campus rec, the writing center, the sales team, student media, Greek life, club sports, the Elon Pole, and campus kitchen. They've led as teaching assistants, NCAA Division I student athletes, orientation leaders, tour guides, executive interns, and tutors, to list just a few.
There's more because their excellence has been seen outside of the walls of Elon and recognized beyond the Elon bricks. 5 of this year's group of fellows and scholars have won highly competitive and prestigious international fellowships, including the Fulbright. Many are looking ahead to positions with leading companies and service organizations across the globe, and a significant number look ahead to graduate halls of study at leading research universities like the University of Chicago, Vanderbilt, and Duke.
May we ask that this year's class of fellows and scholars please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, join us in recognizing our amazing classmates. Thanks, guys. We could not have achieved what we have without the leadership, support, and world-class mentoring we receive from the deans and directors who run these fellows and scholars programs. Please join us in recognizing our deans and directors.
Most of all, we want to thank the most personal, our family and friends who have supported us through this entire journey, and thank you for your continued support as we go on to the next adventure of all of our lives. Mom, families and friends of our graduates, will you please stand so we can recognize and thank you?
Just his mom.
I do not lie when I say I have had a rich and deep experience here at Elon, and now we'd like to take a few more moments to share about those adventures with you. Let's take another look.
These programs offer students such a wide variety of opportunities, but if I had to group them all together, I would say what really makes them remarkable is that they give the students the opportunity to put their own mark on their undergraduate education. So that opportunity to take one's education and really design it according to one's own curiosities, one's own skills, I think is remarkable.
I was encouraged to take the mountains of opportunity that's here at Elon, from being part of the most advanced academics, to service learning, to achieving competitive internships in Los Angeles. Everything here at Elon has really encouraged me and made me more excited about even more professional experiences in the future.
The Teaching Fellows program has given me many experiences that have helped me grow as a student at Elon and grow in my future profession. And it has definitely given me kind of a global awareness so that now I'm better able to understand and address issues that are going on in the education field today.
I more or less came to Elon because of the opportunities of College Fellows, which is crazy because there's a ton of other opportunities at Elon for everyone. The biggest thing is research. As an international studies major, I could choose to study a lot of different topics that brought me to a lot of different places, and I got to pursue all of those different passions from one interest.
I see Teaching Fellows opportunities as kind of falling into 2 major categories. One of those is the travel opportunities we have. We get to study abroad, we get to go on a history study tour up and down the East Coast, and we get to go to DC for 2 weeks. We also have opportunities during our time at Elon, so we have speakers and panels and field trips that are designed to make us better and more prepared teachers.
I think the biggest kind of opportunity that Leadership Fellows has provided me with is being able to have a support base across campus of people with different majors, interests, just in different fields, so that if I'm interested in dance class, I can call one of my fellows and say, hey, I know you're a dance major, can you help me out with this? I really want to get involved.
The College Fellows program is really great for kind of learning how to create a research project from start to finish, going through doing background research in the area, being around all the students in class, kind of going through that process together, bouncing ideas off each other was really helpful for actually coming up with a project I could reasonably do in 2 years at my level.
I really enjoyed the amount that the College Fellows program has asked me to really question the world around me, to see what I can do better, what I can do differently, really diving into everything that I do more than just a surface project, but treating it as, an entire thing that's going from a thought to an actual produced product.
There's been a lot of great opportunities. I think one of the biggest was getting the chance to write a thesis, working with a mentor, and being able to do extensive original research. And for my thesis, no one else had ever actually done research on the topic. So it was really a chance to do something groundbreaking.
Without the honors program, I probably never would have gotten involved in the research that I got involved in. I worked with a great mentor. I got a lot of experience in the lab and in scientific research that I really wouldn't have had the opportunity to do without the honors program pushing me towards research.
I think there's lots of opportunities that the Fellows program, especially business, offers. One of the ones that I like the most is our cohort classes. So we first start off and you come to Elon not knowing anyone, and then your orientation group is your Fellows group. And we keep taking these cohort classes throughout our 4 years at Elon. I think that's probably the best opportunity to make friends, network, and really just make lifelong friends.
I think world experiences like a Sundance, like starting on-campus media opportunities, working with other incredibly talented fellows, makes you that much more confident and kind of self-possessed to say, all right, this is what I want, these are my goals, I can achieve them, and I have these resources and these incredible professors. It just takes the kind of energy and dedication to say, all right, this is something that I want to do.
The opportunities in the Business Fellows program starts basically from the second you walk onto campus, preparing you to go abroad in your freshman year. My class went to Poland, which was excellent, but since then I've done 5 different study abroad opportunities while at Elon. So that was the huge jumping point for me, in addition to the internships and just classwork that we get to do together.
I had the opportunity to live on the Living Learning Community Hall for Honors Fellows my first and second years at Elon. And having a community of people that you live with who are also taking similar courses and going through the similar thesis steps that you are was very important for my first 2 years.
The opportunities coming into this program are collaborating with a large group of students and faculty that already have so many broad experiences in the areas of development and service, and being able to gather ideas from them and really independently come into your own and create a project that you feel good about and that your class feels good about as a whole.
I think the biggest opportunity was kind of falling into this passion that I didn't really know that I had, and really push the boundaries in my brain. And I think that's been the biggest opportunity, is this kind of playground to experiment and discover.
To fully relay all that these fellows and scholars have done in a short video. So not only will we speak with a few of our classmates in some depth who will share their work and experiences, but we also invite you to come to speak with us during the reception after the event today.
For this small taste, we'd first like to invite Shannon Temlak to the stage. She is a friend I've collaborated on a few videos with. She's an Elon College Fellow, Policy Studies and Political Science major, a Phi Kappa Phi inductee, and will share a little bit about her research on climate policy adoption in the United States. Shannon.
My love of learning is why I applied to the Elon College Fellows program. As an incoming student, I aspired to do more than complete the required coursework for my majors and minors. I sought a fellowship program that would challenge me intellectually. Being an Elon College Fellow has given me so much more than just a final paper I can show potential employers. It has taught me the importance of perseverance. Under the guidance of my research mentor, Dr. Spray, I ultimately decided to study state climate policies. I was really intrigued by the fact that some states were readily adopting policies that aimed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the absence of federal regulation, while other states were not. My initial question was, what propels U.S. states to adopt climate mitigation at certain rates and times? A series of complications arose during the spring of my sophomore year and the fall of my junior year. I did not receive a Lumen Prize. I found an empirical article that essentially answered my original research question, and my mentor told me that she would be on sabbatical during the entirety of my senior year. However, each of these bumps in the road was accompanied by a positive outcome. First, I received constructive feedback from the Lumen Selection Committee, and I was assured that climate policy adoption by the U.S. states is an interesting topic and one worthy of investigation. Second, I identified a new conundrum in the climate policy field to pursue as my new path of inquiry. And third, I found a new research mentor, Dr. Husser, who taught me how to analyze my data and interpret my results. I jumped back into my project with enthusiasm and a clear perspective upon my return from London. The summer undergraduate research program gave me the means to spend 8 weeks on campus to work on my research. After reviewing data from the Center of Climate and Energy Solutions, I realized that there's not only variation in the quantity of climate policies that states adopt, but also in the type of climate policies states adopt. So my question became, what factors best explain variation in state climate policy adoption? After tweaking my research design and gathering the appropriate data for all 50 US states, I created a state climate policy adoption index for the purpose of my study. This index is my most important contribution to the field because scholars can use this multidimensional measurement strategy of environmental action to more precisely assess state climate policy adoption. In the fall of my senior year, I tested my 6 hypotheses by performing bivariate correlational analysis. Under the guidance of Dr. Husser, I learned how to use a statistical software package called Stata to calculate and interpret the relationships between state climate policy scores and my 16 independent variables. My findings suggest that state-level political, economic, and environmental characteristics determine states' capacity and willingness to adopt climate policy. 10 of my 16 variables were found statistically significant. The results suggest that states with low pollution severity, high legislative professionalism, high gubernatorial power, and high urbanization are more likely to adopt substantive climate policies. And additionally, states are more likely to adopt policies if they have low carbon generating activities and low fossil fuel economic dependency. This past April, I presented my findings at 2 conferences, the Western Political Science Association annual meeting in Las Vegas and the National Conference of Undergraduate Research in Washington State. I really enjoyed sharing my index of climate policy scores and findings with faculty and students from across the country. One of my favorite moments at the WPSA conference was meeting a political scientist who I'd cited in my thesis. Honestly, it was like meeting a celebrity. It's important to note that the submission of my Elon College Fellows thesis is not an endpoint for my research. There are so many different variables that can explain the enactment of public policy. In fact, I continued my research on state climate policy adoption in my Policy Studies senior seminar. With this project, I sought to understand if the occurrence of extreme weather events, such as droughts and tropical storms, lead to climate policy adoption. I also controlled for regional diffusion, that is, the factor of whether neighboring states might influence one another's adoption of public policy. The Elon College Fellows program has certainly contributed to my personal growth because of the challenges I encountered and overcame during my undergraduate research journey. If it were not for the guidance and support from my 2 research mentors, I would not have successfully completed my project. Dr. Spray and Dr. Husser both stayed by my side throughout the process, and for that, I am grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Fellows and scholars have the opportunity to work in a wide range of disciplines, from the social sciences, as is the case for Shannon, to education, communications, science, and business. We're now happy to introduce a fellow from the arts and humanities, Zane Phillips. Zane is a music theater major, Elon College Fellow, and Phi Kappa Phi inductee. He'll share some of the work he has done exploring the extinction of languages. Welcome, Zane.
Many linguists estimate that there are currently about 7,000 languages in the world. They also predict that over half of these will be extinct within the next 100 years. While this prediction might appear shocking or alarmist, It reveals just how precarious the state of linguistic diversity is. In contrast to ecological conservation efforts, attempts to check the language extinction crisis don't have the backing of general support. When I first learned about the individuals fighting to preserve languages facing extinction, in many cases a steep uphill battle, I found that I wanted to join my voice with theirs. And so I wrote a play. When I say it like that, it makes it sound like a simple process. I assure you it was not. But it was a fascinating one that presented inherent interdisciplinarity in that it engaged my interests in linguistics, my desire to tell a story unexplored by dramatic canon, and my creative drive. The last probably took the most prodding. As an actor, I typically interpret material. With this play, I now had to take my research and essentially create material from scratch. So I initially tackled the research in a two-pronged approach. One side involved research in a more straightforward sense, examining the work procedures and behaviors of contemporary linguists as they catalog endangered languages, identifying some salient linguistic features of Native American languages of the Pacific Northwest, an area with both incredible linguistic diversity and a high rate of language extinction. Looking at anthropological narratives, writings about languages from Native American authors, historical accounts, and much more. The other side of my research involved more practical study, as I learned through trial and error the logistics of writing a play, the basic requirements for formatting a script so that it is easy to read and looks professional, creating a narrative that is both compelling and coherent, and developing characters that not only act in their own unique and individual ways, but also evoke an emotional response from the audience. Suffice it to say, I was doing a lot of reading. Research on its own, however, doesn't write a play. Good theater doesn't ask only about facts, but rather about experience. I had to take a moment to stop worrying about achieving accuracy and go back to my original research question, the one that got me excited about this project in the first place. What is it like to be the last speaker of your language? The research had to inform my writing, but ultimately I had to bring my own soul to the process. I now could begin with a linguistic feature of Montana Salish, an indigenous language that inspired much of the language I created for the play, in which kinship terms change after death. This piece of research then became the material that I could interpret through an emotional lens. In acting terminology, we call that point of view. One character goes farther than simply understanding this idea of change in terminology and begins to possess an emotional response to it. Thus, as he realizes that he can no longer call the grandmother who recently died his word for grandma, the situation gains an element of conflict. This one particular aspect of Montana Salish then became the basis for an entire scene. In this way, my research and my creativity entered into a symbiotic relationship, and the result became Living Voices, an actual honest-to-God play. I think that the word result implies that my most recent revision is the final product. The reality is, this revision represents another step in the life of this play. When it comes to something as personally charged as this, the product becomes a work constantly in flux. When I held a small public reading in early April, I realized just how affecting this story could be. While I care about it, seeing the response of others has inspired me to try and take it further. I want to be able to use and structure the play around an actual endangered language and immortalize it through the theatrical art form. I want to produce it with a company of Native American actors who can not only give their background to the benefit of the production, but also inform this story and my writing with the power of their own experiences. I owe a lot of gratitude to my mentor, Fred Rubeck, and the various professors in and out of ECF who got me to this point. Theater involves considerable collaboration, and the road to this play was no different. Before coming here, I enjoyed art, and I participated in art, but I had no idea that I could be one of those people that created art. Through this process, I began to realize that research and the creative process go hand in hand in a fundamental way. In both, one idea leads to another idea, one question leads to another question, and in the end, the process can become the product. Thank you.
With this group of students who are graduating this year, they all came into college 4 years ago with a whole new set of challenges, whether it be meeting a new roommate or living away from home for the first time. But the students in these programs have an additional challenge. They are being asked to do additional work, to do additional service, to do extra learning. These challenges actually make them better people and have made them the people who are walking across the stage today.
It's tough when you've got everyone in your class being equally as smart as you, if not smarter than you. I really had to push myself to keep up with them. And that's honestly what I love most about being in the Business Fellows, keeping up with the challenges of these very bright and intelligent students that were with me.
I think a big challenge for me was actually coming out of my shell. When I first became a teaching fellow, I was very shy, and I think being in that community with all these other teaching fellows, our little cohort, and that really helps us grow into better teachers that really care for our students and make them successful.
Being a leadership fellow was difficult at first because I was in a group with a bunch of other outgoing leaders, and everybody wanted to be the leader of the group, and so we have learned to balance each other out.
The biggest part for me of being a college fellow is my research, and so most of the challenges have come from my research. It is really challenging when things don't work out, but you have to just keep pushing through. And I think having several other college fellows going through the same thing right alongside me and was really encouraging me to help get through those challenges.
One of the biggest challenges for me within the Leadership Fellows program, I think just finding the courage to step up and become a leader. And there have been many opportunities where I have done that, and I definitely credit it to the Leadership Fellows program.
I think the fact that we do have so many opportunities is both a blessing and a challenge because we are encouraged to do so much all the time, which I personally really appreciate because it's given me a chance to really see exactly how far I can push myself.
There are many events and different opportunities that have been set in our calendar, and it's up to us to make sure that we strategically plan around those events and make sure that we are dedicated and committed to attending our teaching fellow events. Yes, it can be time-consuming. It's so rewarding.
Periclean has been one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences that I've had at Elon. You put a group of 25 leaders in a room and say, your area is Haiti, and create a sustainable change, go. And that was probably one of the most challenging aspects, was deciding when you should step back and listen to others or when it was really important that your voice was heard in that situation.
One of the biggest challenges that I faced with my research was that it's very interdisciplinary, so I had to be able to read very broadly in a lot of different disciplines other than just performing arts studies. So what the Honors Fellows program and the Lumen Scholars program allowed me to do was connect with resources from a variety of disciplines and really integrate those things into my own research.
The challenge with research is definitely that it's very independent. It can be very isolating. You can feel very lonely in the library hour after hour, but having that community of Elon College Fellows really helped me be able to take a break, talk to friends, bounce ideas off each other, and I think all of our projects were really strengthened by that community.
I wasn't the most patient person to begin with, and it gets really frustrating after repeating an experiment 5, 6, 7 times and getting nothing. You really have to learn to accept those defeats, and because they really aren't defeats though, because they are steps in the process.
I think some of my biggest challenges occurred freshman year. I didn't come in, and I was a good student, but I didn't come in with much of a work ethic. And so being in the honors program and having not only the tough love that you get from the professors, but also the incredible support that you get from the professors and the other students really sort of pushed me along.
I would say one of the biggest challenges is finding a balance between your schoolwork and your fellows work. Sometimes you kind of want to put your fellows work aside because you kind of get swamped up in your everyday courses. So that was something that I know I struggled with, but I think having a mentor that really supports you and can support you in your academic career as well as your fellows career, that really helped me.
Especially in the field of exercise science, there's a challenge of working with human subjects. And humans are very unpredictable, but I've definitely learned that it's less important to plan and more important to kind of take opportunities as they come.
As an undergraduate student, it can be kind of stressful and difficult for me because I
don't exactly know what I'm doing a lot of the time. So I rely on my mentor for so much. I go to her anytime I'm confused with something, and she has helped me work through each of my problems, and we've always been able to resolve them together.
I can't lie that it has been tough at times, juggling extracurriculars with class, with social life. I think I have a lot to thank for that about Comm Fellows, and then also a little bit to blame for that type of that challenge and that growing experience, which has really ultimately been really fruitful for me.
I've been having such an incredible time sharing with you and hearing from all of these students. Let's jump over to the world of natural sciences now and introduce Lauren Sutherland to the stage. She is a biochemistry major, honors fellow, Lumen Scholar, Periclean Scholar, and inductee to both Phi Kappa Phi and Phi Beta Kappa. Lauren, you have no problem balancing a calendar. She'll share a little bit about her research on potential adverse effects of aflatoxins on the immune cells.
I've always loved biochemistry. I love knowing how our bodies work down to every protein and what happens when our bodies fail us. When I first came to Elon, I was immediately excited about doing research and started looking for opportunities almost as soon as I stepped on campus. I wanted to do work in immunology, a field that I found particularly fascinating. But immunology is a vast field. I started to browse the current research and discovered a paper on the health effects of aflatoxins, an environmental toxin found in food storage. It's known to cause liver cancer, but there are also some studies showing that it might suppress the immune system. I was thrilled. I learned that good research finds a hole in the scholarly conversation surrounding a topic and attempts to answer the unanswered. This topic was my chance to really make that contribution. I nervously brought my idea to my research mentor, Dr. Train, who gave me more support than I'd ever dreamed of. For the next 3 years, I would spend countless hours trying to answer those unanswered questions. My goal for my research was to find out how this toxin affected our immune systems. There was a study in Ghana that showed that the number of immune cells decreased in people exposed to the toxin, but they had no idea why. I therefore obtained some isolated immune cells, exposed them to the toxin, and tried to figure out what happened. I didn't realize that this would be a lot like trying to find a needle in a haystack. There were a few different ways that the cells could decrease in number. They would have to stop growing, stop signaling, or kill themselves in a process called apoptosis, or programmed cell death. Each of these ways had tons of proteins that could be affected. After seeing no changes in our first few experiments, we kept asking ourselves, where are these cells going? I kept trying to reassure myself with that quote in which Thomas Edison says that he did not fail, but instead found 2,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. Through these failures, I gained persistence and creativity as I continued to find new explanations for this problem. I also learned that research, particularly in the sciences, is not like other forms of schoolwork. Typically, the amount of work that you put into a project is how much you get out of it. But in the lab, experiments fail for any number of reasons, and some give you unusable data. I spent an entire year in the lab before I found something really meaningful. Finally, a test showed me that apoptosis was occurring in my cells. I was so excited. I had finally found my working light bulb, my needle in the haystack. Now, programmed cell death is typically an important part of our growth and development. It's the reason that we don't have webbed fingers after we're born, even though we do in the womb, and how our bodies prevent the development of cancer. However, it can also be a bad thing, which is what I was hypothesizing in this case. If a toxin is causing apoptosis in our immune cells, then we'll have fewer cells with which to fight infections. This can be particularly problematic in the developing countries where this toxin is prevalent, and it has been already associated with more rapid progression of HIV. Now that I knew that apoptosis was occurring, I had even more unanswered questions. I knew what was happening, but at this point I wanted to know how. Apoptosis can happen through either one of two ways. Either through an extrinsic pathway, in which there's a death signal outside of the cell, or an intrinsic pathway, which occurs when there is DNA damage. Truly at the last minute, just a few weeks before my thesis defense, I looked at the changes in protein levels within my cells. From the results, it looks like apoptosis is being triggered by that intrinsic DNA damage pathway, which makes sense considering how it causes liver cancer. Though future studies are needed to confirm these results, I found new aspects of the effects of aflatoxins that we didn't know previously, which will hopefully improve our future understanding of how it affects health in a global context. The thing that helped me most through the struggles of my research was learning more about the global context of this toxin. Aflatoxins are mold toxins found in food storage, so they are most prevalent where food storage is not well regulated due to infrastructural or political issues, and where the climate is more conducive to mold growth. This is most common in developing areas of Africa or Asia. If this toxin is causing immune system suppression, then it could increase overall susceptibility to communicable diseases in those areas. The larger context of my research showed me that there are many determinants of health, such as where you live or what you eat, that are bigger than just the absence or presence of disease. This inspired me to learn more about politics, society, culture, and poverty, all of which have dramatic impacts on health. This is what eventually led me to the realization that I wanted to become a doctor, so that I could address both the biochemical and societal determinants of health. So this summer, I'm heading to the Comprehensive Rural Health Project in Jamkhed, India for 10 months, where I will have the chance to address the social determinants of health by working with rural communities. I will then head to the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, where I hope to become engaged with the surrounding Baltimore community to address health needs there. Though I still have a lot to discover, like what I want to specialize in, I found during my time at Elon how I want to impact the world. I feel excited and well prepared for the opportunities ahead of me and feel that my research really helped me to get there. Thank you.
I think it's very easy to look at the resumes of our graduating seniors and be bowled over. The accomplishments are as high as we could expect out of master's degree students, even PhD students. But it's that internal growth, those personal growth goals that they set for themselves, those are the accomplishments that matter the most.
I think my biggest accomplishment so far in college is just the relationships I've made and the doors that I've opened, especially through the program, being able to work with different types of people and just being able to experience so many different things. And I just want to be remembered for the relationships that I've created and what I've done with the program.
I've learned that I am really capable of creating projects from scratch, and it's been really nice to discover that within myself, that I can set myself a goal and reach it regardless of all the obstacles that I might face.
Over the last 4 years as a fellow, I've really found myself and what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about, and being surrounded by such great people and such great support and the opportunities I had through the Fellows program really allowed me to find what I'm interested in and act on those passions.
I can say that I'm graduating a more mature, independent, and competent individual thanks to my peers and the faculty and staff. Just having that constant source of motivation and validation has helped me grow into a better person at the end of my 4 years.
I've really pushed myself to succeed here and accepted any and all opportunities and challenges that came my way. I've become a lot more confident in my abilities and a lot more eager and excited when opportunities and challenges come my way.
The Business Fellows really helped me develop as a person to, be a risk taker and to really want to explore the unknown and to really, look forward without any fear of disappointment or failure.
As a leader, my biggest accomplishment on Elon's campus has probably been a willingness to understand Elon for its amazing successes and all of its triumphs, but also understanding it for where it maybe struggles and learning to be a voice of reason in some of our tougher times on campus, but also a leader from behind in some of our greater successes as we continue to evolve as a university.
Fellows program has taught me that even if you failed something once, you can accomplish it again in a different way at a different time. You gain a sort of humility and definitely know you can overcome those things, and just because you failed once doesn't mean that you can accomplish it in a different way at a different time.
I've been pushed and challenged a lot during my time at Elon to do things that I never imagined that I would be doing, and getting through those processes has given me the ability to know that I'm going to be able to do new and challenging things in my future as well, and that I am capable of growing in new and exciting ways.
I am extremely happy that I became a college fellow. It's just helped so much. I know that I would have done research even if I wasn't a college fellow, but the experience has had so much more depth and meaning and accomplishments attached to it.
Our work with the Pericleans class has definitely helped me learn how to communicate better with other people, as well as being a part of a team and seeing how that collaboration can have a greater impact than just one person's individual perspective.
The program that I'm going to be working with is out of my comfort zone, and having gone through Business Fellows and having my limits tested through the classes and the confidence that the program has offered will definitely help me draw from that experience to excel in the position that I've been offered.
Being a Lumen Scholar has prepared me for the future because it's taught me a lot about time management, it's taught me a lot about who I am as a writer, and it's also given me a great advantage in applying to graduate schools and jobs because I have this project that I can show to people and show that I have the ability to work on something long-term and commit and do research.
I think about what I would be in college without my friends that I made, the mentors that I've had, the experiences that I've had through honors housing, through my research, through just all the great relationships that I've made. And I don't think it would be half as fulfilling without being an honors fellow.
Things that I've walked away from in terms of accomplishments would really be the legacy that we're leaving behind. I think that a lot of the things that we've experienced, both the good and the bad within Periclean, are things that we are working towards actively, just in terms of improving the program, seeing really Periclean grow to what it can be.
Being a part of the communications program, you can get involved in any student organization the second you step foot on campus here, and then you can get an internship right after your freshman year. So I think the biggest accomplishment for me is that I know once I walk across that stage, I have these real-world experiences I can fall back on. So graduating isn't scary to me anymore because I know Elon's prepared me for whatever's coming next.
When I sit on fellows panels or talk to prospective students, I listen to my peers tell their stories, and I even listen to myself tell my path, and I'm like, if I was a senior in high school listening to these stories, I'd just be like, these people are tornadoes. Like, we sound crazy, but it really is amazing how much we've accomplished in 4 years, and I'm really proud of us.
Now please join us in welcoming back to the stage President Leo Lambert with scholar Omalayo Ojo.
Isn't this an amazing group of fellows? Over the years, I've had a great number of opportunities to interact with these wonderful people individually, and now you're going to have that opportunity at the reception immediately following this event. So I really hope you'll take an opportunity to walk up to them, shake their hand, congratulate them, and engage them in their work. And I know they're going to be excited to talk with you, and I think you'll leave even being more impressed by your personal interactions with them. But one student certainly not to miss is Omalayo Ojo, Keenan Scholar, Honors Scholar, Lumen Prize winner. I'm going to ask Omalayo some questions. Omalayo, tell us a bit about the research you've been doing as part of your honors thesis and your Lumen Prize.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Lim. So my research is on Senegalese migration narratives. I traveled to Dakar, Senegal for 6 months and asked people who had family and friends that lived abroad about the stories that their family and friends shared about their time abroad and how that shaped their perspectives about what it was like to live abroad. And then I spent 2 months in New York City interviewing Senegalese migrants about their own perspectives, their stories, the ones that they chose to share with each other, with family and friends, or the ones they chose not to share. And so I ended up doing a comparative analysis of those two sets of narratives, and I was able to discover some of the themes that overlapped or diverged between the understanding of migration between migrants, Senegalese migrants, and non-migrants. And so some of the findings that I found were around this idea of the El Dorado narrative. And so in migration literature, the El Dorado narrative is, the mythical town of gold where all the riches are. And so a lot of times we use the El Dorado narrative as a metaphor for the reason that migrants go abroad. They're trying to go abroad, make an easy life for themselves and work harder, whatever it is that they're trying to do with the El Dorado narrative. But when I was in Senegal and when I was in New York, the way that migrants and non-migrants understand the El Dorado narrative is truly, truly changing. And they talk more about how the US and other Western nations aren't this glamorous El Dorado that previous literature and general discourse tells us it is. It's more that it's very, very challenging, and there's a lot of work that goes into being a migrant, and you don't just get a job the moment you land in foreign soil. And so that understanding truly diverged from the previous literature, and it was really interesting to see migrants and non-migrants talk about that. Another interesting thing that I found was that there was a disconnect across the ocean. And so non-migrants talked about how they understood that it was challenging abroad. It was hard to make it, you couldn't get a job right away. And so they said how they wouldn't pressure their family and friends to send them home money immediately or whatever it was they needed from their family and friends abroad. But migrants in New York were telling me how, their family and friends don't understand anything about being abroad, and they feel constantly pressured to live up to this idea of the El Dorado narrative that both sides agreed doesn't exist, yet somehow, but somehow the migrants feel as if their non-migrant family members don't understand that, and they feel constantly pressured to always send home money even if they can't, or things of that nature. So it's very, very interesting seeing how all of that played out within the patterns of migration and how we understand migration today.
Well, Omalaya, what prompted your interest in this topic?
That's a great question. So this topic is actually... It is. So this topic is actually very personal for me. I myself, and I'm an immigrant, in case you couldn't tell from my clothes. So I was born in Nigeria, and I moved here when I was 7. So I've always been interested in the movement of people, where they're coming from, where they're going, and everything in between. And I chose the way I did my research, I chose to do a multi-sided approach because that was very, very important for me, and that's something that a lot of migration scholars don't typically do, because you're studying migration, so of course, study the migrants. But every immigrant is also and always an immigrant. And that's a really important statement, particularly the way we understand migration today. And so typically we think of migration, we're thinking, this person is from here, they move here, end of story. But that's not the way it's practiced today. In the 80s, this term came into anthropological use, the term transnationalism, which is the idea that someone comes from somewhere, they go somewhere else, but they're still very much so connected to where they came from. Whether that's politically, economically, socially, whatever it is, they still participate with what goes on in their homeland. They're very much so culturally tied to it in very, very many ways. Whether that's because they have family and friends still there, or perhaps they need to send home remittances, whatever it is, it makes them so very tied. And that's really, really important to understand when we're exploring migration today. And so that was one of the questions that I took on when I did my research.
Great. Well, thank you. So tell us what you had to do to prepare for and plan to do this research.
Definitely. This has been a 2.5-year research project in the works, so I definitely had a lot of preparation. And so one of those things was a lot of reading, of course. This is an academic institution, so that's really great. We love to read. It's fine. But like my peers before me pointed out, when you're doing original research, it's not enough to just ask an interesting question. You have to ask a question, an interesting question that no one has asked before. And that requires knowing what other scholars have already said and what gaps remain. And so where is your question going to fit? And so I had to look at scholars who study Senegalese migration or Senegal in general. And so I was reading up on scholars in the field of in Senegal, and I was also had to read up on narrative literature. And so what does previous literature tell us about the importance of narratives and how we understand it and how that's used in daily interactions? And then on top of that, I had to look at the body of literature on migration narratives, and so how migrants specifically use narratives, right? And so my mentor, Dr. Mold, he helped me sort through all of that literature, and that was really great. And he also was very adamant about preparing me as an ethnographer. And so when you're doing ethnography, it's all about being culturally immersed, and you're doing a lot of participant observation. So I myself had to not only do the research and all that background, but also prepare myself personally as a researcher. And so sophomore year, I received the Lumen Scholarship, which is a national scholarship that helps support American students who are studying languages that American students don't typically study, and then also encourages them and supports them to study abroad in locations that American students don't typically go to. And so I studied Wolof, which is the lingua franca of Senegal, for 2 months in the University of Florida before I went to Senegal for 6 months. And so upon arrival in Senegal, I was already able to greet in Wolof and ask questions in Wolof and just be able to interact with people and show that I was very much so and had prepared myself to do this research, embark on this very intensive research process. And particularly when you're doing ethnography and you're trying to, get people to open up about themselves, like, tell me all about your life and everyone in your life. And, those are very personal questions. And so it's important to come to the table prepared as well and showing interest in them and not just interest in your own research project.
Great answer. One more question. We're so proud of Omalao because another one of her distinctions is that she has won a Fulbright scholarship to study in France next year. So, what have you taken away, big picture, from the research that you've done, and how is that going to inform your work as a Fulbright scholar?
That's a great question. So my biggest takeaway, and no, it's a great question. My biggest takeaway, and the takeaway that I want everyone in this room to have from my research project, is the idea that immigrants are more than just statistics. Immigrants like myself, we're everyday people trying to live our lives. And this is why I chose the approach that I did, the ethnography approach, and learning about people's personal lives and personal stories, because it's very, very easy to get bogged down in the statistics and the themes and the patterns of migration. But until you understand people's personal stories, their lived experiences, their hopes, their wishes, and their dreams, and the reasons they do what they do, you're never going to truly understand this migration process. And so one story that I share often is like the third or fourth research project interview that I did while I was in Senegal was this family, and it was the mom and her 2 daughters, and the youngest daughter was 14, and she had never met her dad because he had left Senegal for the US when she was still in the womb. And so she knows her dad. She's Skyped him, they talk weekly. He's very much so a part of her life, but she's never met him in person. And so even though she was only 14, she had a lot of maturity and understanding how she wouldn't have the things she had without her father. She knew that her schooling and her housing and her clothing was all because of the hard work that her father was doing abroad. And so stories like that are what helps humanize this migration process. It's what puts faces and stories to the numbers and the patterns that we talk about every day. I hope to be a scholar in migration, and so it's really, really important for me to understand migration from multiple perspectives as a migrant, as a scholar, and from all over different parts of the world. And so that's part of the reason why I chose to go to France next year, or was chosen to go to France. I'm glad they picked me. And so I asked specifically, I'm going to be teaching English, and I was a little tired of research, so In grad school. I'll do more of it in grad school. And so I wanted to go ahead and just teach English for a year and be able to interact personally with migrants from a different perspective. And so I asked specifically to be put in a school with a lot of immigrants, and so I'm going to be in a school right outside of Paris that has a lot of African immigrants and Middle Eastern immigrants and North African immigrants and also some French students. And so it's going to be a really great way for me to see how migration plays out in France, and particularly for high school students, which is a very, very interesting age for identity and development. And France particularly, I picked France particularly because France, similar to the US, has a very complicated history with migration, but in a very different way. And so it's very important for me as a scholar and as an intellect and as an individual to understand how this plays out in the policies and everyday interactions that we see around us. So, and I know that whatever comes next, whether it's law school or a PhD in anthropology, we'll see. I know that my Elon education and all the experiences that I've had here have more than prepared me for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Omalaya Ojo. Omalaya, congratulations.
Thank you, President Lambert and Omalaya. Very, very impressive. Our final spotlight of the evening is something you can actually listen to while you're popping from table to table during our reception. Brooke Jenkins has created some amazing original music for you to listen to. She is a music production and recording arts major, honors fellow, and Phi Kappa Phi inductee. I'll know you'll really, really enjoy that.
Before we conclude tonight, let's hear it one more time for the class of 2015 Fellows and Scholars here today. Guys, tomorrow we become graduates of Elon University. Family, friends, and guests, thank you for everything you've done. Mentors, directors, and everyone that's helped us along the way, thank you. We'd be lost without you. We so appreciate everything you have done to get us to this point.
Please make sure you grab some food, drink, join us here around the perimeter of the Great Hall and in the atrium behind the fireplace here. It has been an absolutely incredible experience being with all of you here tonight. Congrats, graduates. Thank you so very much.